Once, twice, thrice. Countless number of times my door was banged desperately by someone gasping, wheezing, and crying hysterically. As I walked toward my door, the banging and crying kept getting louder and louder. All alone in the house, I peeped through my eye hole, hoping to see a visitor. No one in sight and the banging getting louder and louder, I frantically opened the door to see my next door neighbor lying on the floor, crying. Eyes like she'd seen something horrible. I was completely baffled, not being able to piece a word coming out of her mouth. But she kept telling me, she's fallen, it's done, she's finished it, it's over. Frightened and panicked, I start running down the stairs. As I run down the stairs, I get a call from the girl who lives in front of me, and she says, someone's fallen, you need to hurry. With every step I took, my heart raced. My heart raced because I knew one of my worst fears was to come true. I entered the parking lot, and that's when I saw it. I saw what changed me forever. I'm sad. I find no reason to wake up. I'm depressed. I can't find absolute happiness. My 80-year-old neighbor's words sped through my mind as I saw her lying face down on the floor of my parking lot with a pool of blood all around her. She ended it, just like that. Desolate and tired of looking for absolute happiness. As I saw every part of her on the floor, the way her feet lay, the way her hand was bruised, and the way she just lay there, still. I remember stepping back from her body, not being able to comprehend that she actually had given up. After 80 years of seeing her triumph through every hardship, she had just given up. Desperately trying to get a hold of the situation, in denial of the fact that she was no more, I remember calling ambulances in the hopes of saving what was left of her. But the truth was that I was trying to save her, better yet, stop her from quitting the journey we both were on. The journey that leads all of us to our ostensible goal in life, happiness. As I signed the ambulance papers, looking at her, dead, lifeless, I remember her voice just ringing in my head as she said, when will it end? When will it all get over? When can I find absolute happiness? And I was just lost. I was lost because I didn't know what I was to do next. I was lost because I was on the same journey as hers. I was behind the same goal as hers. I wanted to be happy too. What went wrong? I just kept asking myself, did I miss something? The minute we step into the world, it's a sigh of relief when we cry. It's a sigh of relief for the doctors and the parents when we cry. And if we don't, we are made to. But as the years pass by, the phrase is, it's all right, don't cry, just be happy. You just need to be happy and it'll all be all right. These phrases get ingrained in our mind and we subconsciously tell ourselves that in the end, I just need to be happy. And we set out to look for this end where happiness is just waiting for us with open arms. And that is exactly what she was trying to do. Waiting for the end where she is just happy. Then why? Why stop? Why quit? An endless list of whys started to pursue me, making me question what comes next. And so I traced. I traced everything from the beginning. We were both on the right track. We took the right turns. And most importantly, we kept going. It all made theoretical sense, but what went wrong? I just kept asking myself, did I miss something? Soon enough, everything started to look like a puzzle. One where I'm always going to be stuck, and one where I always keep asking myself, am I missing something? Are we missing something? Are we missing a piece, perhaps? In search of this peace, I reached the office of my therapist, and one of the biggest clues in my hunt for this missing piece. On the first day in his office, I remember telling him my incident, the situation and my dilemma. And I remember just concluding that this is it, it's over, I can't do it, I'm never going to get out of this. And I distinctly recollect that one sentence my therapist told me. He said, "This might look like your post-traumatic disorder, but remember, we want this to be your post-traumatic growth." I never thought of it that way. Throughout my interactions with my therapist, I always began my sentences with, "I'm never going to be able to do this. I can't." But somehow, as I used to step out, they always used to change to, "Maybe I can. Maybe there is a solution." And I remember feeling this sense of hope. This sense of hope that kept me happy, happier in the tough times. Walking back home, I realized that I was so quick to conclude. We are all so hasty in our conclusions. But what I also realized whenever I made conclusions was that I was undermining my ability to ever be anything bigger than what my troubles made me. I was being unfair to myself. And I was doing the exact same thing I was afraid of being done to me by the others. I was judging myself for my past. So why? Why the conclusions? Why the nevers that make it tougher for us to forget our troubles? Why the it's over that make it tougher for us to find happiness? Why restrict yourself in that box? As the days went by, through my conversations with my therapist, I started to understand myself better and look at life for what it is. The horizons of my perspective of looking at each and every day had widened, moving beyond the momentary dissatisfactions and looking at the picture from all angles holistically. But more importantly, I had started accepting. I had started to accept those dissatisfactions, accept those bad days and tough times. But I had stopped concluding. I had stopped restricting myself in the nevers and the I can'ts. Making some solid headway into my progress of growing from what had happened, on one of those bad days, on one of those tough days, my therapist shared with me something invaluable. And this became my biggest breakthrough in finding the missing piece. Something I never knew had the power to turn my entire life around. My therapist always told me that therapy doesn't begin inside those four walls. It begins when you step out of them and realize each and every word that was said inside that room. And on that day, that big day of my life, I realized each and every word that was said inside that room. That was a big day for me. It was the day when my friend and I were set to release something we had worked hard for, our podcast. But this day happened to be my test, where I had to effectuate all that I had learned inside those four walls. Beginning the day optimistically, I head to school, geared up knowing everything will go according to plan, until it didn't. On one of the first lessons of the day, in our English lecture, we decided to discuss the poem, My Mother at 66, where the poet expresses how she's prepared for her aging mother to pass away. Finishing the recitation, we decided to discuss how elderly people struggle to find happiness. And just like that, it all came rushing back. Those images, her body, my thoughts and the door bangs. And I panic. I panic and my fingers start shivering. I start shivering and my heart is racing. My heart is racing as I go to the restroom to calm myself down, but I collapse. I collapse as I burst into tears. And as soon as I was going to slip into the I can never and I can't, I took a minute. I took a minute to accept. Accept that I'm panicking and it's all right. But I didn't conclude. I didn't conclude that I can never get out of this. Getting a hold of myself as I calmed down, I remember telling myself, today I want to get back stronger. I want to get back stronger because today I'm doing something meaningful, and that keeps me happy. Stepping out of my classroom outside those four walls, I realized what I had done. I had stopped coddling my past, and I had allowed myself to be much bigger than what my past had defined me to be. It's comforting. It's comforting to not break out of our troubles because we know what it feels like to stay inside of them. But it's tough. It's tough and it's scary to break out of them because we don't know what lies next. Throughout my interactions with different people, and especially the ones my age, I realized a trend. We often tend to coddle ourselves and keep alive our past, and we don't let go. And sadly today, the reason seems to be that having a troubled life makes you, for the lack of better words, cool. When we hang on to our troubles in the hopes of being viewed as cool and accepted, I realize that we are actually undermining the gravity of our troubles when it actually comes to moving on. Because we know that we are losing a part of ourselves which we deemed as cool. And that just makes it tougher. As I walked outside my class that day, I realized that I want to change this narrative. And this little fight I put up that day kept me happy throughout the day. I had many such setbacks that day, from losing a friendship I cherished to the release not going as planned. But even through all these setbacks, I found myself following a pattern of accepting, not concluding, and looking beyond my troubles. And this formula I kept applying kept me happy throughout the day, even through all my tough times. As I looked up to something meaningful. I looked up to engaging in something meaningful, which kept me happy. That same day as I walked into the office of my therapist, I began to narrate all that had went down. And towards the end of the session, we discussed what all it is I need to work on to better myself and to lead a better life. Now these revelations would have otherwise bogged me down, sending me into a spiral of, my life is so bad and I can never get out of this. I'm stuck. But that day, on that day, I walked out of my therapist's office with a smile on my face. It was a smile of me being content. It was a smile like I was at peace. Walking back home, I just couldn't stop smiling. I felt victorious. I felt like I had done it all. For it was that walk back home where I realized that invaluable thing my therapist had shared with me in his office. That day, despite everything going wrong, despite me facing all of my troubles, I realized that I was relatively happy in comparison to all my troubles. I had realized the golden theory of being relatively happy. As I reached my house, I stood still in the parking lot where my 80-year-old neighbor lay. And I cried. I cried like I first did when I was first born in that hospital. I cried like a newborn. And I sighed. I sighed like my doctors and my parents did when I first cried. I sighed because I found it. I found the missing piece. Crying my heart out in that parking lot, I realized that my therapist was trying to show me the missing piece that was in front of me all along. That missing piece is right in front of us ever since we're born. But we so conveniently ignore the phrases that are told to us right after we first cry, that we only focus on, it's all right, don't cry, just be happy. While the phrases have always been, it's all right to be sad. It's all right to fall. It's all right now, don't cry. The past is behind us. Let's now just focus on being happy. Let's now just focus on being relatively happy. Life is made of pain and pleasure. In the times of pleasure, let's all cherish it. savor it. And in the times of pain, let's all engage in something meaningful. Let's all look up to those days of pleasure. This is relative happiness. Being happy in comparison to all the pains in one's life. And in that way, I found the answer to all my whys. By completing this quest, I also found my biggest responsibility. With pain and suffering being constant in our lives, we've been given the privilege of being happy. And with this great privilege comes the greater responsibility of keeping ourselves relatively happy, even in the times of pain and suffering. As the youth, we are exposed to the realities of life early on. And it's pivotal to remember that being relatively happy isn't a choice we have. It's a responsibility we shoulder. And that is what my biggest teacher, the one who led me to the right path, the one who expanded the horizons of my perspective, my 80-year-old neighbor, was asking me to find. Once again, looking back to both our paths, we were on the right track. We did take the right turns, but we took the right turns after looking past our troubles. We did keep going on, but we kept going on after accepting all our pains. It was right there. By being relatively happy and not chasing absolute happiness, I completed the journey she and I both were destined to complete. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the piece of the puzzle we're all missing. Relative happiness. Thank you.